This program has been made possible by contributions from our viewers. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Drew. Welcome to the Beggars Woodshop. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are most welcome. Thank you for joining me here, and thank you for inviting me into your homes, laps, hands, well, just however you happen to be viewing this program. Welcome also to our new subscribers. You are most welcome as well. Well, there's a lot to talk about, because it's a long history, but hopefully I don't cover everything, because I want you to be able to look up the rest if it piques your interest. So, before I get started, a reminder, the GoFundMe campaign for the Beggars Woodshop is still going. Link is in the description below. We're coming up on 2 years, and I'd love to answer questions in my next video. Nothing but questions. All from you, ladies and gentlemen, so please leave a comment down below with your questions. You don't have to be a subscriber to ask a question, just as long as you've got a YouTube or Gmail account, you're okay. All right? Shall we get started? Good. Excuse. I seem to be having a little frog there. There he is. It's gone. So let's rewind the clock all the way back to the end of World War II. And we have this can-do attitude here in the United States. The GIs have come home. We're all happy. And we are looking to do things. We have this DIY can-do attitude. People are owning more homes. Tools are becoming a little more affordable to be able to do it yourself, especially power tools. Well, a German immigrant named Hans Goldschmidt invented a machine that was compact and allowed to have your table saw, your drill press, your horizontal boring machine, your disc sander, your lathe. Sound familiar? Yes! And it was compact, affordable, multi-tool, and yeah, as I just said, same functions as your Mark V. And he called the name Shopsmith. The tool was the 10ER. Came out in 1947. And this is a great start. You know, all shopsmiths have got to start somewhere, and that's where it happened to start. Well, let's fast forward about 6 years. And Hans is looking to improve his original invention. Well, that's where my machine comes in. The Mark V Greenie. Now, what was different? Well, you got a mobile base now, right? If you look at those old 1010Rs, you got it's all benchtop type of things. All right, you've gone upgrades. You got some great upgrades, and I don't just mean the mobile base. No, let's start with the motor. The original 1010Rs were a half horsepower motor. Now you've upgraded to a 3/4 horsepower motor. Another thing you may not know, your saw blade. The saw blade on the original 1010R was a standard 8-inch saw blade that was found on most tools and could still be found on circular saws today. Well, now you got a 12-inch blade. More power, more meat. Ho, ho, ho. That's pretty good. 1953. My machine's in 1954, so not bad. Okay. Keep going forward in time, and to save a little money, because these things did cost a little more to make, even when the additional accessories came in, they decided to try this. 1958, the Mark II. Yeah, I know. How did we go from 10 to 5 to 2? What happened to 1 and all the other numbers? Well, some of the other numbers will come in, but there's no Mark I. You could make the argument, since the 10ERs were first, they are the Mark Is, but they're not called that. All right. The Mark II is a stripped-down version of the standard Mark V that you would see. Kind of tried to combine the best of both worlds with the Mark V and the 10ERs. Unfortunately, they weren't the greatest of decisions. They were constructed a little differently with the materials, and it didn't really... I've been informed they're not as efficient. It wasn't a good endeavor, but they tried. Now, we're coming into the 1960s, and the machine still the same, only now it's known as the Mark V Goldie because of that gold, tan, brownish color. All right, mine's called the Greenie because it has that green color. And there is one upgrade that is made immediately, and it's known as the Poly V drive. All right, the drive systems are a little different but that was the Poly V drive. Now, these runs ran from 1960 to about 1963. And in 1962, they upgraded the horsepower to 1 1/8, which is pretty much what they use nowadays. Then in 1963, they painted them gray, that standard gray you see today, just like back here on my bandsaw. Also in 1963, we have the introduction of the Mark VII. Now, again, the numbers, people, all right? 10, 5, 2, 7. Well, what was interesting about the Mark VII? Well, one had an entirely different base. It had to have an entirely different base because the Mark VII's introduced a double tilt system. You lift these things up and boom, you got your drill press and maybe a few other abilities. But now you could lift it up the other way and you had your router shaper capabilities. Now, another thing that is unique, the table for your table saw and whatever else was a little bit different. There was a secondary slot, but also it had an early version of the table, the floating tables, those extensions. Rather than putting a second piece here, it's like, no, you get a little extension that comes out that can float. Early versions. This is the beauty of the Mark VII, is that it's kind of a predecessor to things that are more common on today's Shopsmiths. Now, here's the thing you gotta know. This is where it gets more interesting. You start with the motor. The motor can go either direction. Everything's one direction. If you're facing the machine, the quill spins towards you. The double tilt Mark VII, it could spin away from you as well. Open up so many possibilities. But this also had its downside because the Mark VII, on its base, had a dust collector. And, well, it ran off the main motor. And if you ran that machine in reverse, you're not going to suck up the air. Okay. So a lot of people just decided, you know what? Disconnect it. We're not going to have the dust collector. We'll do it separate. So a lot of people did that with their machines. But also, the Mark VIIs back then weren't as great. They were using some newer space-age plastics on it, and those could easily deteriorate over time and exposure to UV light. So you kind of... Yeah. Admittedly, it was a great endeavor. Just like with a lot of great endeavors, not as well executed. There are a lot of people, I think, out there who are not aware of this with their Mark VIIs, because I do see them on the market. I do see them. I don't know how well they work. I'm not going to sit here and say whether or not they're good or not to use. So, they're a neat collector's item, I'll say that. I will say that. So what happens next with the history of Shopsmith? Well, you go through changing of odors, no production, blah, 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 accessories here, standalone units there. Well, let's jump from the 1960s all the way to 1980s. 1984, all the way to today, you begin pretty much what becomes standard. The Mark Vs by this point are called Mark V 500s. That's what you can call any unit before that. Okay. Well, you start with the improvements that get made between 84 and now. You have a better quill system. Better safety guards, all right? Especially for dust collection table saw. I've brought this up I don't know how many times on my channel. All right. Your switch. now has a key that can be removed. So it's a safety feature as well. Mark 7s would eventually be reintroduced with the Power Pro. The table saw system would go from the 505 to the 510 to the 520. So right there, you just improved the whole table saw system. Now, eventually, new units would come out. Of course, people lately have been talking about the Power Station and the Crafter Station. But aside from those and standalone units, in terms of something that looked more meaty like this, they came out with the Shorty, sometimes called a Deputy. I know some people probably don't want to call it a Deputy. Scott. And then, of course, more recently, they introduced the Mark IV. Both the Mark IV and the Shorty just shrink the base. I forget off the top of my head which one's shorter than the others, but this is actually pretty useful. You still want the heart, the meat, but you have the more compact space, especially when you have all your secondary attachments, bandsaw, jointers, planers, etc., and so forth. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a brief history, and I mean brief history, of Shopsmith tools. Now, I'm not going into the whole company changes, Magna, Magna, M-A-G-N-A, okay? Don't get it confused with something else, all right? No politics. None on this channel. All right? All the other features and attachments that come out, what little tiny things improve. No. I've covered the base. Hopefully this inspires you to go out and look at more. If you liked this video, please like, comment, subscribe. All right? Hit the little bell icon if you subscribe so you know immediately when a new video comes out. All right? Share this with your friends. Maybe they might be interested in Shopsmith, or they've got one of these older machines they may not know some information about. There's tons of research out there. Our GoFundMe campaign. And aside from all that, hopefully I will see you next time, right here on the Beggars Woodshop.